All right, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. The University of Maryland hosts the Professional Preparation Workshop Series, and this afternoon we are excited to provide content for you on netiquette, networking in a virtual world. And we've been joined by a dear employer partner of the University of Maryland for years and years and years. She's been such a fabulous supporter, educator, and encourager of our students. And so we are grateful to welcome Ms. Lauren Scott to have us this afternoon to share with us her expertise in this space. I'm going to read a little bit about our presenter, just so you have some context from which she comes and the lens that she brings in terms of the content and the subject matter expertise that she will offer this evening. So Lauren is currently an academic outreach program coordinator with the Department of Defense, and she's based here in the state of Maryland. In her role, she is responsible for the implementation and the engagement of colleges and universities who are enhancing and increasing the curriculum and knowledge of cybersecurity. She also serves as an online part-time lecturer in the Northeastern University's College of Professional Studies, where she teaches graduate courses in leadership. She also serves as an online adjunct instructor at her alma mater, Johnson C. Smith University, and she teaches various business and professional preparation classes. Prior to joining the agency, Lauren was an employment consultant for the retail banking network in the Charlotte metro region at BB&T. She's active with many civic and professional organizations within her community. She's an active member of the Junior League of Washington and also a member of the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, where she is also active in her church here in Washington, D.C. So as you can see, our presenter has a lot of industry knowledge and is well-versed in community relations and engagement. And so we'll have much to share with us this afternoon. So without further ado, Lauren, I will turn it over to you, and any introductions that you want to provide prior to getting started, please feel free.
Sure. So, Ellen, thank you so much again for having me. And I always enjoy and look forward to this time of year, to the springtime. And before it was our dining etiquette, which was always fun. So I miss those, but I'm glad that we're able to do something a little bit different this year, this spring. So, and what a great topic. I'm sure that everyone knows that there's obviously the pandemic has really transitioned a lot of our work and what we do, and how we network, how we work in the world now. And so today, I think netiquette and networking in a virtual world is a perfect topic. And so I appreciate everyone being here and participating. So I will be going through the presentation. I have some notes here because I want to make sure that I cover everything that I intended to cover with all of you. And then at the end, I'll give everybody the opportunity to ask me any questions you might have. So if you, Lynn or Michael, if you want to if there are any questions that maybe come in through, feel free to stop me. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So what we're going to talk about today, there are three key things that I wanted to talk about as it pertains to netiquette and then networking in a virtual world. So first, which is most important now that we're having to move into virtual environments, is the virtual networking aspect. I also want to talk a little bit about virtual interviewing, which is one of the things that my team, we will participate sometimes in doing mock interviews, and we've been doing mock interviews from a virtual standpoint. So definitely have some experience in talking about do's and don'ts and what to do to make sure that you're successful in your career aspirations and in your career search. And then finally, to finish up the presentation, I have just a slide just to kind of talk about key things to kind of keep in mind as you're navigating your future in this virtual world. Just things that my mentors have taught me and key things that I think are important for you to be successful in your career and just in life. So we'll start off with virtual networking. So, as everyone knows, hiring managers are constantly searching for ways to spend either less time or energy or money while trying to fill different positions within their organizations. It's also a challenge too, finding that best match when looking for people to join their organizations. At the same time, we have those individuals who are out trying to really get out there and find jobs, taking that time, the energy to go out and show potential employers that they're the best applicant and candidate for those respective positions. So now within this virtual world, virtual interviews are a convenient way for not only employers, but then also for applicants and candidates. It's an affordable solution for employers to meet the needs of both sides, whether it's from a hiring standpoint or for those that are applicants that are candidates. So, virtual interviewing and networking can take place via many different mediums. So you'll hear about web conferencing, as you guys already know. We have here Zoom that we're on, but there's anywhere from Skype. You got Microsoft Teams, Adobe Connect. There's so many different outlets and so many different platforms that are being used now, and that's why it's so important that you are well versed and know exactly what to expect with those different platforms. I wanted to bring out a study that was placed out in some of the research that I did. A 2013 Right Management Survey found that 1 in 5 applicants, which is about 18%, have participated in a virtual interview. So again, just imagine from 2013 to now where we are with virtual interviews. So when we talk about virtual networking, whether it's virtual or if it's in person, networking is still the number one way to land a job or an internship. So like in-person networking, building relationships requires time and should be, of course, authentic and sincere. And you'll hear me say being authentic a lot throughout this presentation, because that is, of course, what you're going to want to feature throughout your networking and your interviewing opportunities. So the way in which I've broken out the presentation for the virtual networking and the virtual interviewing is 3 key areas. So I have before the event, I have during the event, and after the event. So we'll talk about things that you can do and tips and helpful tips that you can do before the event. And then we'll talk a little about things that you can do during the event to help you stand out and be your authentic self. And then finally, we'll talk about things that you can do after the respective event to, again, make sure that whomever it is that you're networking with knows that you're interested in keeping in contact with them, and maybe, again, landing that job that you've always wanted. So let's talk a little about before the event. So one of the key things that you will want to do is identify and participate in virtual events. This is a great way to connect with different professionals. So there are a number of events that in the past, but similar to now, that you can still participate in. You have different organizations, professional organizations that put on monthly webinars, or you have different maybe governmental organizations that are putting on different sessions. And even from your own academic institution, they're putting on great virtual events. So, identify those key events that are going to be great networking opportunities for you to meet and to also, again, spread your network, expand your network, and gain new people to know. And to, again, most important thing is to build your network. The second thing, so Handshake is a new type of platform that's out that showcases different events that you can participate in. So check that. And that's just one example that I'm giving. But again, take a look at different websites, different organizations that will highlight different events that are currently available or coming up. So another thing to do is be mindful of different dates. You'll see different dates that are posted, but keep in mind and look closely into the information that are posted from these different organizations, because some of the events will allow you just to join, click on a button on their webpage that allows you to join. while some of the other organizations will require pre-registration. So again, be mindful of that, and don't be shocked when you get there the day of and you're not able to get in because you're actually supposed to pre-register. So again, keep those things in mind. Additional things. So familiarize yourself with technology being used. So there are some cases where you can download the apps on your phone, and then there's some actual apps that you have to download on your computer. So if you've never used those systems before, familiarize yourself with those actual apps and platforms prior to joining to the events, because you don't want to have any technological or technology difficulties when you are trying to log on to the different events, especially when we start talking about the virtual interviewing in a second, and later on in the presentation. You'll definitely want to make sure that you have downloaded the app correctly. You're familiar with the different specifications of it, how to work the actual, within the app, and so forth. So keep that in mind as well. And one keynote too is that, there are different websites that are featuring ways to learn about these different apps in the virtual worlds. So in some of these different events that you will participate in, so you can let me get some water. Some of the events that you'll participate in, you'll need to review the employers or professionals who are going to be attending. And this will help with, again, your opportunity to go out, learn about, maybe go on their LinkedIn page, see about who they are, what organizations they're with. And then if they're in this actual platform where you can virtually network with them, you can, reach out to them through the actual app or the platform to get to know them more in terms of maybe what job opportunities are out there, or even just networking. Sometimes it's not always necessarily about going out and looking for a job. Sometimes it's just really creating your network so that you might, in the future might need them for different jobs, or depending on what type of position you're in. It could be anything from maybe needing sponsors for a nonprofit or something to that effect. So again, it's not always necessarily about finding a job. It's about finding customers, finding donors or sponsors if you're in a nonprofit. So keeping that in mind as well, knowing who's is at your actual event. A key thing too to remember is that make sure that you've read the news. So topics such as weather, business, sports events, or different events could come up in the conversation. And you want to make sure that you are well versed in what's going on in the world and in the economy, because there will be sometimes in these actual chat rooms and virtual networking settings where you will have to engage in conversation around current events. And one of the things that is, I think, really good is when the actual platforms and organizations who are sponsoring these events will sometimes provide kind of virtual happy hours or virtual networking rooms. And so that is where you're going to find where there's going to be a number of different topics of conversation that can come up. So keeping that in mind when you are getting ready for your virtual networking opportunities. So now we're going to shift into, excuse me, shifting into during the event, what to expect, and some tips on what to do and what not to do. So while attending some of these events, always be prepared to answer questions. So of course, you're going to have those common questions. Tell me about yourself. What brought you here? What are you studying? What are you looking to do? And so you're going to need to prepare all these different types of responses and be ready to answer those questions when it comes time to doing those virtual networking events. And again, it's all about contribution to the conversation. Now, I will caveat that by saying that you should always be sure that you don't want to get into too heated of topics or topics that are off limits when you're talking about religion, anything around, you guys know the topics. I could list, all of them, but mainly important is like religion, politics. You have to be careful with those types of topics when networking, and steer away from engaging in any kind of serious conversations around those kind of topics. So with traditional networking, think about what you want the outcome to be. Again, as I mentioned, you will need to figure out, is this someone that you're looking to talk to for a job? Is it someone that you're just looking to add to your network? Or is it something that you're just looking to learn about an organization? And I think another key thing to kind of keep in mind as well is, having, and I used to teach this in one of my professional presentation classes, is you're going to have to determine from all these people that you're meeting at these different networking events, have your A list, your B list, and your C list. Okay, so your C list are going to kind of be something you might kind of keep on the back burner. Your B list is going to be those that maybe might not be the right time and place to that you might need to work with them, but they could be of value to you in the future. And then you have your A list, and those are the ones that you're going to want to continue to keep in contact with and utilize their expertise, find out about job opportunities, and continue to network with them from a current standpoint. Another key thing to keep in mind in the virtual networking setting is being respectful of time. So in some of these different virtual networking sessions, you'll find that there will be different networking rooms. And so keeping in mind that it's not just you there. There's going to be other participants. So, limiting and being concise in terms of what you're maybe discussing, or when you're speaking, maybe in networking or in a small networking virtual room, keeping in mind that keeping your thoughts concise to be fair to others is important, and will look positively upon you in these actual sessions. So again, also during the event, make sure that you're asking for contact information to stay connected. I know sometimes in some of the events that I participate in, the common question will be, or it will be already provided by the presenter, is, can you provide your email address of where we can keep in contact with you? So ask for that right away when you're going into the events. Again, only speak if it's to ask a question of others or to encourage others to speak. Again, be careful with speaking too much. Again, you don't want to take over the whole session, because that can have a negative outlook for you. So again, make sure that what you're speaking about is valuable and is contributing to the conversation. So right in the beginning, when you're getting started, you might want to just in the chat say, hello, everyone. This is Lauren Scott from Department of Defense. Here's my email address. Look forward to networking with everybody, where it puts it right out there. You're showcasing yourself in the beginning, and everyone's able to see you from the beginning in the start. Okay, so post that email address and phone number in the chat in the beginning. A key thing, and we've all been taught, the great saying of thank you. So never miss an opportunity to say thank you to the host or the facilitator of an event, letting them know that you're appreciative for them putting on that respective event. It can always go a long way. And finally, most importantly, be authentic. Be yourself, be authentic, showcase who you are. Again, know your elevator pitch in showcasing the skills and abilities that you have, and contribute to that conversation to show that you're engaged and that you can make an impact wherever you are, whether it's within that networking space or in a future job. So after the event, what can you do? So of course, be sure to follow up with those you've connected with. So those that you've collected their contact information, make sure that you are collecting their names. And if they're talking about specific things, take notes to the side, so that when you respond to them and when you're sending them a note afterwards, you can say, hey, I remember you referencing XYZ about what's taking place at your organization. We'd love to talk with you a little bit more about that. So that is really will stand out in terms of you were really paying attention to what they were saying. You were engaged in the conversation. That can go a long way. So keep that in mind. Follow the employers or organizations you connect with, whether it be on LinkedIn or on Handshake or any other type of platforms that you can stay connected with those that you're networking with. It is okay to reach out every few months with updates on what's new and to ask different questions. There's some times where maybe there's something new taking place with you. So, saying, hey, I got a new certification, or I am going to be moving into a new job, or whatever it might be that is appropriate to send out with an update for those that you've networked with. It's a great time to reach out to them within a few months with different updates on what's new, and then to also ask questions. So I'll stop here before we go into virtual interviewing. Are there any questions? Elaine, am I moving too fast? Or are we good?
I think you're doing a great job.
Okay, great.
So just as a reminder, students, you can drop questions in the chat, or as Lauren said, every few slides she'll stop and kind of give space for you to ask if you want to hop off of mute.
Hey, Lauren.
Hi, Miss Lenore. How are you?
I'm doing well. And I do have a question. Sorry, I was about 2 minutes late joining in, but I want to know, how do you dress for virtual networking?
Oh, yes. So we are actually going to be getting to that within the virtual interviewing section. So hold that thought right there. We're going to be getting to that shortly. Because it really could be, it's going to be the same from whether you're at a virtual networking event or if you're at a virtual interviewing event. Nowadays, not that you're going to be sitting at your computer. So the attire, the color, all that, we'll talk about that shortly. But it's great to hear from you, Miss Lenore. Thanks for coming in.
Lauren, I did get one question in the chat
for
one of our participants, and it asks, what kinds of questions should we ask, or kind of what content should we use when we follow up with a new contact every couple of months? So can you speak more to, the what of how we should reconnect and around what topic?
Right. So, one of the key things that, I would tell my students when I was teaching professional presentation at Johnson C. Smith is, again, on the back, and of course we don't have business cards now, but in the notes that you're taking from these different virtual networking events, write down some of those key events or key topics maybe that the person you're networking with talks about. And then, as you're responding back to them within a few months, checking back in, you mentioned that your company was at, 50% in growth, where, in a couple months from now, when you're actually going to be responding to them and reaching back out, where is your company with the growth? You mentioned that it's 50%. Where are you now? Again, you're bringing that back to that you were engaged in the conversation and that you were paying attention. And then also maybe just asking about maybe if they talk about some of their personal or professional accomplishments, whether it's, I just received a certification, maybe a couple months from the time that you meet them at these virtual networking events, saying, hey, how are you putting to use your certification, in project management or whatever it might be. Again, those are the types of things that are going to really stand out to someone, and knowing that you were engaged, and then also letting them know that you're very interested in what they're talking about. So hopefully that helps. All right, so let's move on to virtual interviewing. So while even though we're kind of in a virtual setting, it may be different than it is in person. The same rules do apply when it comes to preparation. So we're going to talk a little bit about, before the interview, during the interview, and what to do after the interview. So again, kind of the same similar setup as we were talking about with virtual networking, but now we're going to gear it towards more of the interviewing side of it. So before the interview, the first thing to keep in mind is dressing the part. So even though it's virtual, you still want to, of course, to dress to impress. There's no such thing as, overdressing in an interview. excuse me, dress as you would for an in-person interview. Again, I know we sometimes get comfortable and think that we're, at home behind the screen, but really you have to dress that part, dress for what it is that you're wanting in the future. So for men, that might mean a button-up shirt or a blazer or some chinos. While women, you might want to consider having a dress or a skirt and a blouse on when you're doing your virtual networking or your virtual interviewing sessions. Okay. While it might not seem necessary, professional pants are recommended because just in case you're asked, to maybe, or even if you have to stand up, maybe something is unexpected that you have to stand up, you wouldn't want to get up and you have your pajama pants on. Okay. So again, make sure that you do have professional pants on in these virtual networking and interviewing sessions. In this case, one of the key things to know is that professional clothing will show that you're serious about the position, and that there are personal benefits to doing this when you are in a virtual setting. And studies have also shown that most authoritative, trustworthy, and competent people, when wearing formal business attire, are, again, that's a key thing, that interviewers will take a look at, and it's important to see. Okay. Another thing to keep in mind when you're talking about dressing the part from a virtual standpoint, when you're maybe on Skype or Zoom, when you're doing interviews, is stick to jewel tones. And these colors have the right amount of saturation for all skin types and will prevent washing you out under harsh lighting. So avoid any overpowering patterns or flashy accessories, so to not divert the employer's observation of you or attention from really talking about your expertise and when you're actually talking. You don't want that to take away from your interview or when you're networking. You really should be the focus of the interview, not your wardrobe. Okay. A couple other key things to keep in mind as you are going through dressing the part is avoid wearing bright white tops or shiny jewelry that could cause glaring. Okay. Again, you have to think about what it will look like from a video standpoint. Don't wear a top that blends or clashes into your backdrop. So your backdrop. So your backdrop, some people will have, I don't have a backdrop on mine, but some people will have created backdrops. And you don't want anything that's going to blend in or clash with your backdrops that you have maybe in your settings from a Zoom or a Skype standpoint. Again, avoid sparkly, gaudy, or jingling jewelry, because as you're talking, you don't want that to be a distraction while you're interviewing. Talked a little bit about passing on clothes with loud patterns or designs that reveal too much skin. Again, same concepts apply here from a virtual interviewing or networking standpoint, that you don't want to, again, take away from you and who you are and what you're presenting and your expertise that you're presenting because you're revealing something or you're wearing something that's too revealing. If you opt for nail polish, choose a neutral color or a manicure. And then if you do, sometimes nerves can get the best of us and we can be in a setting where we might get nervous. So if we have to blot our face, feel free to blot your face. If your nose or your forehead seems a little bit oily, it's okay to, take a Kleenex and blot your face. If you happen to have that when you're in a virtual networking or interviewing setting. Okay. The next thing to think about is think about the location. So again, where is the best place to hold these networking sessions or your virtual interview? So consider what you want to have as the background in your video. Okay. The color of your backdrop can also determine what to wear, because again, you don't want that to fade or blend in incorrectly with what you're wearing. If possible, sit in front of a blank background so that you can remain the focal point. Again, you don't want anything to take the focus off of you in the actual interview. If your house is void of empty walls, set up in your home office or in your living room, just as long as it looks business-like or professional, that is the most important thing to keep in mind. Always make sure that the space is clean. You don't want to, have any trash or mess on the floor. Again, people, you wouldn't believe it, but interviewers are always looking at everything in the background, and you want to make sure that you are totally appropriate in your video calls. So the messier the background, the harder it is to convince a hiring manager of how detail-oriented or organized you are. So again, those are key points to keep in mind. If you have to move furniture around, make sure that you're able to move your furniture around, make your background look professional. And then also kind of keep a couple things about your location. We'll talk about it a little bit when looking at your technology, is making sure you prop up your computer so that it's at eye level. You should be at about an arm's length from the camera, and your eyes should be about 2/3 from the bottom of your screen. So keeping that in mind. Your webcam should sit at eye level and angled so that your head and shoulders fit in the actual frame. You don't want to be too far away. You don't want to be too close up into the actual video. Throughout your virtual interview, remember to look at the camera rather than at your screen as you're giving answers. I know we sometimes would like to take a look at ourselves, but again, always make sure that you're looking at the actual camera as you're talking. And if again, just always, I know it's hard sometimes, but just really focus in on looking at that camera rather than at your screen. Considering lighting, make sure that you're sitting in front of a window, or so you're facing the window is the best option. If that's not possible, then set up lighting or lamps in front of you. So on my desk, I have 2 lights in front of me. The main thing to avoid is being backlit. Okay, so this is when the majority of your lighting is coming from behind you. And like if your back is to the window, you want to make sure that you're avoiding that. And it can also cause a shadow. Another thing to keep in mind is soft lighting is the best to avoid when having to squint at the camera during the virtual interview. So again, keeping that in mind, you want to make sure that you are clear and you're not making any weird faces while you're going through the interview. The light should shine on your face and come from behind the webcam again. And placing your lighting source in the back view will create a silhouette from the interviewer's perspective. The next is sitting down prepared. So just because you're on a computer screen doesn't mean that you can search for the web to answer the questions, because that's definitely not going to be the case when you're sitting in an interview. Make sure that you have you appear focused and that you're ready to answer any questions without the help of the internet. So again, you're not going to be able to research while you're interviewing. So be prepared prior to coming into the virtual interview. Research the company ahead of time, jot down any notes. And we'll talk about this in a moment, is that you can always have your resume and information about the company on your desk or to the side so that you have that to reference as you're interviewing and answering any questions. And as I mentioned, printing out a copy of your resume is really important, because sometimes as you're interviewing, if you happen to lose your thought, you can look down at your actual resume and it'll help you collect your thoughts again. So keep that in mind when you are being prepared and getting prepared for the interview. So as you guys know, I'm going to just go over a couple of some of the questions and common interview questions, which you guys probably already know, but there's a plethora of those types of questions out on the internet. So I encourage you guys to go look at some example interview questions. But so some of these questions that you should be prepared for is why you're interested in this role. What do you know about our company? What are your biggest weaknesses? I know that's a common question that we get. What do you consider to be your biggest professional achievement? Tell me about a challenge at work and how you dealt with it. What are you looking for in a new position? And then also, maybe if you're in a current position, why are you leaving your current role? So again, some of those things are important to, and those questions are really important to kind of always refer back to you, because majority of the time, I would say maybe about 80% of the time, you're going to get 1 or 2 of those questions that I just threw out. And I think I accidentally skipped over setting the scene and minimizing distractions. So I'm going to go back to that. So where you conduct your interview is going to be very important. You want to try to find a location, again, like I said, that's well lit and has a neutral background. And making sure that you're turning off the TV, silencing your cell phones. I know sometimes I've been sitting in on some of these different sessions that are for work, and the text messages are chiming through. And sometimes, my speakers are so loud sometimes that it's just the chime just rings through my ears. And so make sure that you turn off, silence your cell phones, and closing the windows to muffle any kind of honkings or horns. I was telling Lynn earlier, there was someone outside mowing the lawn, and I said, what a perfect time. Here I am about to talk about best practices and do's and don'ts, and here I have someone outside with the lawnmower. Sometimes you can't help it. But again, sometimes you might just have to preface it, going into your interview, that unfortunately you don't know who decided to mow the lawn at the time that you're doing the interview, but it just happened that way. So it's okay to preface it. But luckily, when I started, the lawnmower was finished. So while you can't plan for every distraction, and especially for those of you who have children, the more prepared you are, the better. So keep that in mind. And if you do live in a shared space, it's important to let the people around you know about your interview. If you have roommates or if your parents live with you, you don't want them, popping up into the video, and maybe they're not fully dressed, or maybe they are making some, talking about something that they really shouldn't be talking about while you're on an interview. Make sure that they know that you're in whether you're in a virtual interview or a virtual networking session, to leave you in your area and give you some space during that time that you're on those settings. Okay. You just don't want there to be any interruptions, so that you can focus in on the task at hand. Another key thing, let me go back to the sit down prepared. You want to make sure that you avoid memorizing your actual responses, because sometimes it can seem very rehearsed. So keep that in mind. You can prepare, and it's really good that you are prepared going into your actual interview, but you don't want to sound overly rehearsed. So keep that in mind. Provide high level thoughts. Maybe write down post-it notes along your computer that you can stick on your computer to help you with your thoughts, so it's not so rehearsed. Okay. Another thing to prepare for, the question that you always will get at the end of your interview is, do you have any questions for me? Okay. Again, there's a lot of great questions out on the internet that you can refer to, that will help you with questions that you can ask the employer. So some of these questions could be, what does a typical day in the life of this role look like? What are the company's goals this quarter? How would you describe the ideal candidate for this position? Where does this role sit in the organization? And what other groups will I be working with? And one other example that is really a good question is, can you walk me through the next steps of the hiring process? Those are, again, great questions to ask of the interviewer. So the next key thing to do before the interview, Alin, how am I on time? I think I'm supposed to, I probably have 3 more minutes, right?
You are perfect, actually. We want to save some time for questions, but yeah,
okay.
Continue.
Okay, great. So again, making sure that you practice with your family, practice with your friends when it comes to virtual interviewing. You might want to test your system with them. You do maybe a practice link and send it out to them so that you can test the settings on the app that you're using for the virtual interview. Okay. You don't want to sound robotic through the interview, whether answering or asking the questions. It'll give you a chance to rehearse with maybe different personalities. Maybe do it with your mentors, or again, like I said, your coworkers or your family. Okay. It's important to just, again, be clear and concise in your answers, and who's best going to give you feedback in response to that, other than your close colleagues or your coworkers or your mentors. They'll give you the most honest feedback. Keeping your virtual identity professional. So again, now that we're moving into such a virtual world, you have to think about some of your virtual identity platforms. So whether it's your email address, whether it's a name on your, some of your personal profiles, In today's world, your email address or your username is often the first impression that you're going to get from employers. So you don't want to give a hiring manager a reason to question your professionalism before they even meet you, with providing maybe one funny, maybe your high school nickname or whatever. Avoid putting those in your email addresses. Sassy girl, whatever, 2021. You don't want to stay away from any of those types of funny, non-professional types of email addresses. Keep your email and username addresses simple. Try different combinations, maybe with the first letter of your name, your middle initial, and maybe the last initial of initial for your last name. And then you also want to stay away from the number 1 or 0, because sometimes they can come across as letters. Okay, so keep that in mind from your virtual identity. And making sure that you keep that professional. And then finally, making sure you test your technology. I talked about this a little bit before, but one of the most common concerns is making sure that you have a strong Wi-Fi connection. Making sure that Wi-Fi is strong will help with the bandwidth and picking up within your apps that you're going to use for your virtual interviewing settings. If you live with others that are sharing the same network, ask them to shut down their devices during the time of your interview, because again, keeping in mind that can pull again on the strength of your Wi-Fi within the house. And then also you want to shut down other applications on your computer to help with ensuring that it is your computer and the actual interviewing app or whatever platform you're using is going to be working correctly. You also might want to conduct your interview close to an outlet. Sometimes you might want to sit maybe on our sofa, which is not the best place. Again, you want to make sure that you are comfortable, but you also want to make sure we'll talk about your body language here shortly, but close to an outlet so that you can charge your laptop, and making sure you don't run out of battery while you're interviewing. Try not to use a device that accepts phone calls or text messages, because again, that can interfere with your interviewing. And again, just making sure that you are up to date with the system and the platform that you're using, because sometimes a lot of the different apps and platforms will make updates. So make sure that you have that up to date on your, whether it be your computer or on your phone. And then finally, along with testing your technology, decide on a plan just in case the technology cuts out. This can provide, really involve providing an employer with your cell phone number just in case it cuts out, and that you'll call right back in if something happens where you cut out. But stay calm, don't worry. We're all dealing with this virtual technology, so it's understandable, but as long as you're prepared before you go into it, it'll help to minimize the stress. Okay, so let's talk about during the interview. As I mentioned before, first you're going to want to start your virtual interview in the same manner you would if you were interviewing on site. So you want to start off with the greeting. Again, this would be your elevator pitch. So even though you can't physically shake hands, you can politely acknowledge your interviewer. Again, give a brief overview of yourself. And sometimes they will lead and maybe kind of moderate the interview. But if you're able to do a quick introduction and just, a polite hello and an introduction, absolutely go ahead and do that. Okay. So as I mentioned before, set out important materials to refer to. So keep copies of maybe your cover letter, your resume, your job application, and any other employment documents that you would find important to refer to throughout the interview in front of you and on your desk while you're interviewing. You want to, of course, maybe have a notepad where you can write down important facts about your employment history. You'll maybe write down even questions that you're being asked by the interviewer, and will help you to frame your answers before you respond. So just making quick notes and having a notepad next to you during the virtual interviewing setting. Another key thing, like I said before, having Post-it notes and sticky notes attached to your computer can help to keep you motivated, excuse me, keep you motivated, and then also helping you to frame the answers to the questions. Monitoring your body language. Unfortunately, you can't do a greeting by hand and doing a handshake. But again, making sure that you're sitting up straight, you're smiling, keeping the camera at eye level. They're going to, and research has shown that researchers are going to remember what you say by the eye contact that you give. So keeping that in mind, making sure that you're keeping your eyes focused on the camera, like I said before, not kind of looking around. You want to make sure that you are sitting up straight and having good posture. You want to limit, if you are in a chair that swivels, you want to make sure you're not swiveling the chair, because that can look like you may be nervous. So again, keeping that in mind, that you're in a chair that does not swivel. And then, if you have to cough or sneeze, which, my sinuses have been ridiculous these days, just say, excuse me. It's okay to cough or sneeze if you have to. A simple gesture, those simple things always look good from an interview standpoint. Making a connection. You never know how many interviewers are going to be on the actual call from the company, but you might be at the end of a long list of people from the hiring manager that you spoke to that day. Make that connection with those managers that you're talking to. Again, those questions that you ask them at the end of the interview are going to be so important for you as you're making that connection. I'm going to take a sip of water. All right, excuse me. Being yourself, a key task for a recruiter, determining whether you would be a good fit for the company's culture. So during this virtual interview, be yourself, have a lot of energy, positive energy, smile, and showing and showcasing all the great abilities and expertise that you have is going to be really important. So be yourself. And then, of course, like I said before, being authentic. What is it that makes you unique? What is it that you stand out from other applicants, and why they should hire you? And then finally, building a rapport is important in any business relationship, because it allows you to separate yourself from other candidates. When you interview in person, your enthusiasm, your body language is going to come off differently. So that's the reason why you want to make sure that you're coming off in a positive manner. You're confident in what you're doing when you're interviewing in these virtual settings. All right, so now we're after the interview. So key things to keep in mind, and the most important thing is immediately following up. And this is, again, one of the most important things. After your interview, plan to send a well-timed follow-up. It's good practice to send a follow-up within a 24-hour time frame. Thanking the interviewer for their time, talking to them about what it is that you learned from what they talked about when you asked them questions about the organization, letting them know that you're available for any other questions, or can provide them with any additional details that they might need. And then also, if you don't get their contact information, which you should get their contact information during the interview, you can always reach out to the HR recruiter, or HR representative or recruiter, if you need to get the interviewer email. All right, so quick points on email. Getting close on time. So of course, always ensure that you're professional and appropriate to your audience. Don't use too much bold or all caps or lowercase or punctuation. Again, keeping that in mind. Use only abbreviations that are common to English. Again, most of the time, you should not be using those in a formal thank you that you're sending out to an employer. Compress any large attachments. If you're going to send maybe additional documents to support what you spoke about in your interview, compress those large attachments. And then also indicate in the email if you're attaching the document. And then just in general, and I always put this out to my students, be careful with the CC or the replying to all or the BCC, because you just never know who it's being sent to. So be careful in that regard. And then this is just an example of back in the day when I was working at an accounting firm in recruiting. You just have to be careful to be, you don't want to be informal. You don't want to put any of these types of emojis or anything like that in your actual email. Always keep it professional. And then finally, actually, before I go into the next section, which is only one slide, Lynn, navigating your future in a virtual world. I'll just pause to see if there's any questions and also take some more water.
We invite questions in the chat, or you're welcome to come off mute with any thoughts or questions you might have.
I have a question for you. If you're doing it on your laptop versus a desktop computer, how would you get it to the eye level, like what she was talking about, for when you're doing virtual interviews?
So there are laptop stands, or there's like I have a stand here that I can that is my my monitor is on top of, but there's also sometimes you can just use as simple as putting books, and to stack it up if you don't have a formal laptop, or a stand that will lift your laptop or your actual screen. That's the best way that I find to do it. I know with my screen, sometimes I have to adjust it and I have to kind of sometimes play with it, but that's the best way. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yes, you did.
Okay, great.
Lauren, would you speak a little bit to LinkedIn, right? We know, kind of following an interview now, a student should send an email within that 24-hour time period because no one's physically in the office, and so mail may or may not get to the person. Would you also consider best practice, or kind of what would be your tips relating to kind of connecting on LinkedIn post an interview, as it in contrast to networking? And I think that comes up some for students too.
So I'm not the LinkedIn like extraordinaire. It definitely is a great networking platform. One of the key things, the connection section, one of the things that I've learned is that connection section, that those that can provide recommendations is a key thing that is important, because employers can, read the different recommendations that you have on your LinkedIn profile. Making sure that your profile and what you're showcasing on your profile from your previous experiences is succinct. It has the most important information, but it's not too long. Again, you want to make sure that it's pleasing to the eye and easy to read, and something simple for if an employer or recruiter has to go in and quickly just take a look at your background. It's not something that they're having to fully, scroll through. One of the things is to ensure that you keep it up to date. And then also, of course, having that professional photo. And I notice sometimes people will just kind of crop their photos, but it doesn't hurt to invest into a nice professional photo, and taking that photo to put in your professional profiles online.
Thank you. We don't have any other questions in the chat, so we'll let you finish and then we'll save time at the end.
Okay, all right, good. All right, so the reason why I wanted to kind of put this brief section in there, navigating your future in this virtual world, is because I know that, we all have felt defeated, sometimes, and have been discouraged with everything that's been going on, with the pandemic. But there's ways to continue to stay motivated and encouraged, and just know that, you are having the same feelings as everyone else is in the world. So, but important to stay motivated. So I wanted to just provide some key things. So while you are, again, we've talked, a lot about this in our in the briefing today, and it's important that you stay connected. So whether that's with people or people in the community, that can help with, and especially from a virtual standpoint, staying connected is important, and will help to keep you to stay motivated and connected in terms of different job opportunities, maybe networking opportunities, or even, it's important to even have that community service on your resume. So keeping that in mind as well. So being action-oriented, and what I mean by this is be assertive, be entrepreneurial, seeking out different opportunities that are available. Again, continue to connect with people is really important, and keep an optimistic outlook on the future. Everyone has their unique ways of, whether it be motivational, biblical scriptures, or whatever it might be. Find ways to stay motivated and encouraged. So be action oriented. Share how you're feeling. You have academic advisors, you have counselors on campus, you have your career counselors. Feel free to go to them. That's what they're there for, to share how you're feeling. You might be feeling a little stressed out with maybe the job search, or with things taking place with the pandemic, or whatever it might be with your studies. Share how you're feeling. Don't hold those in, because we're all having similar feelings going on right now. So keeping that in mind. The next thing is keep an eye out on who's hiring. You might think that no one's hiring, but to much people's surprise, there are organizations and companies that are hiring. So keep an eye out on all those different career websites. Utilize your career services with the employer connections that they have. Look on the different government websites for the positions that they have available, but keep an eye out. Always keep an eye on who's hiring. Participate in virtual career fairs. So I'm sure that your wonderful career center has put together virtual career fairs for all of you to participate in. I encourage you to participate in those. But then there's also different organizations, nonprofit organizations, professional organizations that are hosting virtual career fairs for the public, for their members. So participate in those career fairs. Is a great opportunity to, again, create your network, build your network, and then also to, finding mentors. That's one of the most important things that I've learned in my career, is to find a mentor. So participate in those career fairs and virtual networking opportunities. Round out your skill set. So many educational companies, or even at the universities, are currently offering many of their sessions, much of their maybe research or expertise that they offer. They're offering them for free. So keeping that in mind, rounding out, you might just be sitting at home. They might be offering webinars on, how to improve your communication skills, or how to improve your leadership skills. Round out your skill sets during this virtual time, and the time that we're able to be at home even more. Utilize that time to develop yourself. And then finally, invest in lifelong learning. One of the things that my mom instilled in me at an early age is being a lifelong learner. I know, the responsibility of staying relevant is all up to you. And the way that you stay relevant is investing in yourself and in being a lifelong learner, and continuing to enhance your skill sets and your mental abilities, and what it is that you can offer to be successful in the world. So continue to invest in yourself. So that concludes my presentation. And again, I want to just thank Ms. Lenore, the Career Services Center at University of Maryland, Lynn. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come and present today. I missed you guys on campus, and look forward to getting back on campus hopefully soon. And best of luck to all of you. So I'll open up the floor for any more questions.
As you all think of some final questions, I just want to again acknowledge you. So thank you, Ms. Lauren Scott, for your consistent presence. As I said at the beginning, you've been a long-standing partner with the institution, and every time we engage you, it's relevant, it's timely, and it's exactly what the students need. So we appreciate you and your expertise and the time you constantly give back to our students here at the University of Maryland. So kudos to you. Open the floor. Any last questions from students? I see a comment in the chat that is important, no question, but this has been incredibly helpful. I would definitely concur. I took some notes myself, so.
Good.
Well, what we'll do is, students, if there are no questions that you have, we'll hang around here for a few minutes in case folks feel more comfortable coming off camera with not as many people on.